Hello, my name is Kyle, back again for another episode of Midnight Paranormal Files podcast. Today we are going to be talking about Door County and Washington Island hauntings. Now, Washington Island is known for a few hauntings and Door County in general. There are a few haunted pubs slash bars to a few haunted roads in the county itself, which we talked about before in the past. Two cryptids, which we will talk about in the near future. Now, Washington Island is known for a bunch of other things also, like vineyards. Um, so they make their own wines there and stuff like that. To Washington Island itself, which is a tourist, big huge tourist attraction there, which you could take like a ferry with your car to the island itself, and you could check out the lavender field that they have on the island itself, to one of the oldest bars. And speaking of so, we are going to be talking about one of the oldest bars in the state. Our first location is located on Washington Island, which I talked about before. It's called Nelson's Hall and Bitters Club. This is the oldest running bar in Wisconsin, surviving the Prohibition era. It was open since 1899. How they got away with selling alcohol in the Prohibition era, the stuff that they served was called bitters. Bitters was never meant to be drunk on their own, at least not as an alcoholic beverage. Federal agents stopped at Nelson's Hall one day and observed all the makings of a speakeasy, with a tipsy crowd doing shots of a strange substance, which he inquired what the people were drinking. He learned it was bitters. Wasting no time, the agent went to the county seat in Sturgeon Bay, and he had papers drawn and served to Nelson. The tavern owner was charged with violation of Valestic Acts. He went to court. I'm sorry for not saying that right. Stubbornly determined to fight for his rights, the state made their case, which was clear cut. Nelson was serving alcohol beverages forbidden by law. According to legend, when Nelson was called on for his defense, he produced a bottle of Angostura bitters. I apologize if I said that wrong. And a shot glass. He cited this product could be purchased at any drugstore and offered many medical benefits, including aiding stomach problems. Nelson claimed that the product was so foul tasting that it could never be considered a beverage, and it must be strictly medical. While prohibition ended in 1933, the consumption of bitters at Nelson's continued. In the mid 20th century, Nelson's new owner founded the Bitters Club. The club continues today, and any person who could swig a shot of the bitters, that's a short history. Anyway, that's a short history lesson on the bitters and Nelson's pub. But we are not here to talk about that. We are here to talk about the hauntings of Nelson's pub. The many reports say that they still see the original owner, Tom Nelson, walking around as apparition and other strange things happening. People report seeing in the bar, like doors opening on their own, sounds of disembodied voices, and people feeling strange in the bar itself. So that's basically Nelson's Pub. We are going to be talking about Rock Island Lighthouse now. This is a lighthouse located just north from Washington Island, where Nelson's Hall is at. It is a walking island, has a few hiking trails and stuff like that. And the lighthouse is pretty old. Lit in 1836, it's the oldest light station in Wisconsin and on Lake Michigan. The current building was first lit in 1858. It was served by civilian lightkeepers from 1836 to 1946, at which point it was automated until 1988. Between 1836 and 1946, there was one wreck that was reported causing 7 people to be rescued. Only 4 survived. When it was replaced with a modern skeletal tower and automated system, the original keeper was David Corbin, who is buried on the island. The lighthouse who was listed in the Natural Register of Historic Places in 1979. So, what is the hauntings of this place? You're asking yourself. They reported hearing strange noises have been heard in the lighthouse itself, doors opening and closing on their own. Some believe the spirits of the keeper, Corbin, who is still walking on the second floor to this day. The cemetery on the Rock Island, people seen strange apparitions to a small two and small children playing near the graveyard on the west side of the island. So that's mostly the history and stuff like that on Rock Island Lighthouse. There isn't too much to share about that place. But let's continue on to the next one. Now, the next place that we're going to be talking about is Shipwreck Brew Pub, and that is another haunted bar in Door County. Shipwreck Brew Pub, built in 1882, the original shipwreck has gone through renovations. 2017, a fire destroyed the whole building, and a year later it reopened. In the Prohibition era, Al Capone, we all know him, and his gang went to Door County for a vacation. One of his favorite places is, well, the place I mentioned before, the brew pub. Um, I mentioned before, he had an affair with one of his girls with one of the ladies that worked there, which resulted in a birth of a illegit and basically a child he didn't think it was his child or whatever. Basically, the people who work there today hear ghostly cries of a baby around the whole entire restaurant. Some people saw a frantic looking woman in search of her child. Capone allegedly took care of the problem himself with the child and was never seen again. The more people think always suffered the same fate. Nobody knows what happened to her in either. A ghostly image of an unknown boy been spotted throughout the building, upper part of the building since the 1920s. Some say this was Capone's child also. A strange, a strange looking woman is spotted walking around the dining room as she inspects how clean the room is. Her name might be Ms. Verna Maru or something like that. I'm sorry if I pronounced out that. Um. Uh. Anyway, she owned the building from 1945 until 1975. A lumberjack ghost visits the restaurant also. People reported feeling negative around him because he might be not so friendly, is what I meant to say. Lights would turn on and off on their own, and someone walking around when it's closed, and objects moving around on their own, and finding them in weird locations. I'm also going to add Alexander Noble House. Alexander Noble, he lived from 1829 till 1905, was one of the first first people that is a founding father of Fish Creek, which is a town in Door County. He's originally from Scotland, and he moved to Chamber Islands in 1856. He built the first sawmill and turned the island into a busy lumber camp. He moved to Fish Creek in 1862. He became a blacksmith, postmaster, farmer, town chairsman, and county board member. That is a lot of stuff, if you ask me what he did. Um, Anyway, Emily Noble, his wife, passed away in 1873 by a house fire, and it burnt down his whole entire house. The new house was built in 1875 in the property he used to own. The Noble house was the first to be made of lava and plaster, or something like that. I'm sorry for my pronunciation for that. Plaster is mostly though. Um, Many visitors have reported seeing apparitions, orbs, and faces in the windows. Among other sightings, they think it's Emily who is still trying to take care of her children and wanders the house. And the reports go as far back as to when the house was built, basically. So her husband has probably seen her and stuff, according to reports and stuff, which go back to 1875. That is pretty interesting, if you ask me. Now, Shipwreck Brew Pub I always wanted to go to, but I never been there before. The place I have been to before in the past, I actually took a vacation. I took a vacation there before years ago, to Institute Saloon and also in Door County in general. Institute Saloon. It's one of the oldest buildings in the county. It was opened in 1897 by John Webster Sr., was used as a post office in town in 1912 and turned into a meeting place for the locals and travelers. They had wrestling matches, square dancing, and other events. And that's when it became a bar. They had other owners who took control over it throughout the years. When people visit this place, they encountered a little girl while alone in the women's bathroom. The women's door opened and closed on their own, and phantom voices calling out to them, seeing dark shadows, people have reported. No records of anyone dying in the building was mentioned at all in the research, but maybe I did miss something. Who really knows what happened? But the last location is Rangeline Road. I would mention Buffalo Ridge Road, but we mentioned it on a different podcast episode and talked about that place. But anyway, Rangeline Road, there's not that much history of this location. People heard mentions of a ghost on this road like 50 years ago at this point, and yes, there's supposedly a ghost on this road named Gretchen. She was a milkmaid and served and still serves milk to this day, or that's what people seen. People who drive on this road report seeing this person on the side of the road and is missing their legs and floats down and up the streets. Said the cause of her death was a car that hit her, basically. And I have never been on this road at all, personally. I've been to Nelson's Hall and I've been to Institute Saloon, but I have never been to Rock Island or Shipwreck Brew Pub. Those are the places I've been and have been to in Door County. I have I haven't done an investigation though at any of these places, so I can't confirm if they're haunted or not. But anyway, that's basically all the places that I know of on top of my head and what I have written down on here and research that are haunted. So that's basically the end of this week's podcast. There are places that hold more mysteries and stuff like that and ghosts in Door County. We will be focusing on that in the future. Make sure to subscribe or like the podcast or give us a review or whatever you gotta do. And tune in next time for Midnight Paranormal Files podcast. And also tell your friends about our podcast as well. And thank you again for listening.